Hello everyone, thank you for coming. Thank you to the organization for inviting us to explain our work and also specific to this graph theory project. My name is Mario Bastande, as you can see here. I'm in charge of data in Action Against Hunger and also the cash and voucher projects. We'll explain that later, how this works. And we'll be talking about graphs for good in general and how we applied it in our work. So this is the agenda. We'll be talking about what we do in this organization, also what kind of approach we have in terms of graphs, and well, all this pilot project with KACHE and our production project. That is more focused on the financial part, financial execution, and then like good practices if you want to do the same, the same process and the same kind of projects. This is the countries where we are working right now. We have 5 HQs distributed around the world, and we reach all these countries in the world. That depends on mainly if there are crises there. That could be natural disasters or some other crisis made by men. And well, we are all around the world and we have knowledge about context everywhere. This is the kind of projects we do in Action Against Hunger Spain. We have different kind of projects, but mainly nutrition, livelihoods, water and sanitation. But we also give support in terms of shelter and protection, access, and different kind of issues. I'm going to explain a little bit how our team works in terms of data in the HQ. We have data managers and scientists. We all work together with the MIL department, that is monitoring, evaluation, accountability, and learning, business analytics, and ICT team. So we are like the more focus on data. Then we have data analysts. They are in the bases in the countries, and we give them support. And we all work together for the end users, for the application users that are our audience in terms of products. As we are an NGO, some of you may come from the private sector, and is quite of like similar in some ways, but especially in the NGOs it's quite difficult to work with data. So that's why our history is always trying to take us to the difficult point of going to data because of funding, because of vision. We'll talk about it later. But this is the situation we are now trying to get into the data analysis and data approach. So why we go for graph theory? Well, I have some background working with graph databases. I was working in a previous organization called Huridocs, working with documentation, human rights documentation somehow connected. We can talk about this later. Once we finish the presentation. But this is an example of graph we have in the organization. We have the country, the Palestinian territory, also some bases, some offices we have there, like Gaza. And this is an example of a contract we have. This is a very simple example. But this is the kind of graph theory we want to apply depending on the knowledge. Based, of course, in the expertise. We have a really good context of the data, and we know what is happening with this data, but we just need to represent this in a way to prove and to be accountant in terms of what we are going to do. We have also many factors involved in our issue, so we want to mix different sources, mix different databases. We have this context, we have this qualitative analysis as well, that is not only the data we put in the graphs, but it's some knowledge that we have in our mind, but we are not able to represent it in a graph. Okay. always in a decision-making focused, and what I wanted to get with this project was to give the user the freedom to explore the graph themselves, because we don't have time to be answering their questions every time, so we want them to be able to do it themselves. So this is the main reason I wanted to use graphs. How we made all of this, it was easier in terms of we have some data sources that mainly coming from Excel files, but we also have some internal information systems, but it's very basic. So we converted to a data model and we went to the graph, okay? In this case, we have the context of the data model, so we know how they are related. It's not complicated, and we have this knowledge beforehand. So, different sources from operations, finance, logistics, security, all of them, we mix them by using some ETLs like transformation processes to get this kind of graphs and other tools in visualization, okay? The learning curve was hard, as you imagine. We don't have expertise on this. We were only 2 people working on that. So it was quite hard to get into the project, but we finally got it. For a pilot use case, as I told you, I'm in charge of these e-distributions projects. KACHE is the kit for autonomous cash e-distributions, and we mainly build small banks in remote areas where no transactions are possible. So they don't have access to the money. They don't have access to cash. So we go there because now it's like a new trend in humanitarian action that you don't go to some place with rice or with shelter and you give it to them. You try to empower these people, not only the affected people, but also the market system itself, and you try to empower them by giving them cash or by hiring them as a vendors, for example. Okay? So this is a new trend in humanitarian action. This is a well-structured database, so that's why I started with that, because I didn't want it to fail, actually. And we have mainly relations among people and among transactions. So how people, it's like a bank, okay? So how people buy things and how people sell things. We'll see the data model now. This is data especially for Lebanon, but we did it for Mali as well. So this is the model in our minds. As a main points, we have the people, like affected people and the ones we hired as vendors. So they will have, they are like street shops or regular shops, different kind of vendors. And of course, the people. So transactions are also important in this model. And then we have some other factors. This is how it looks in a graph database. A little bit more complex because we wanted to have everything related, but it's all about relationships. It's exactly the same thing we saw before. So we started to make some questions to this database, and we got these kind of results. For example, how people in general, like vendors or people affected, move. And that's very important for us in terms of some security issue happens in one place, so why they move, you have to anticipate that. Why people, not only vendors, but the affected people, how they move because of some reason. So you catch this and you go to get the reason what is happening. For example, we also have this kind of result that is taking the vendors, the people, and where they are doing different transactions. So this is giving us information about where they buy things and why. And also was very important for us the fraud, because they normally spend all the money at the beginning. Like we put the money in the card, in the credit card, and they spend this money in the first few days. And we wanted to understand why. We wanted to understand if it was fraud, if they were getting just cash out the money instead of buying the the items. So this was also interesting. What items the people get if they have access to these, to the commodities, to the items they want to have access. We'll see how to get to that, some recommendations later. But also, like, mainly interested in the profiles of these people, like depending on the gender, how they buy things, depending on the gender, depending on the nationality, and we could even group people, groups of people, and understand why they go together to buy, for example. Okay, so you get closer to the affected people. Thanks to the shortest path algorithm, we were able to recommend some people to go to different places to buy items that they don't have in their area. So this was really, really useful. So it's a very simple algorithm that you apply automatically. And well, it's also talking about the availability of these of different items, if you can recommend the vendors to buy new items, new commodities. But we got some recommendation system, not like the ones we are used to with Google and so on, but something similar. And of course, how people relate, these groups we make with people, how people relate each other. We got to know these issues. Or if they have some problems, some security problems, to go to the vendors, why, these questions. And of course, in terms of data quality, we realized we had some problems. We had a lot of problems in the part of quality. That we were solving later on. So this is the part of KACHE. This was the pilot project, but then we said, okay, this is working. We can answer some questions. So why not go into some more specific question that was more important for us? And we went to the financial execution. Financial execution was a problem for us, and we tried to put it in a graph, in a model, and just to try to solve it. So what's going on with the rest of data in the organization was we tried to mix all of them, different sources coming from different databases, and we got some results about it. This is the model we thought was going to be used. A very simple model. I don't want to go into details, but you have here information about operations, financial, logistics, because there are different reasons for this financial execution to not be done in a proper way. So we already identified that. It was easier for the data model. We identified where the problems were coming from. So we decided to go for this data model. That later on was a little bit more complex, and we realized we couldn't get some data from activities, like different stuff. So it's not always the idea you have in your mind. Then when you go to practice, of course, you find different issues. So what are some of the results about this project already in production and already used by different end users? So, for example, we were able to identify the contracts that were not going in a good way at the end of the contract, which is like the main point. If we are finishing some contract, so we need to go to that contract and take attention on that. And we found out where and why. And all these reasons and factors that I was telling before, like depending on different factors already identified by the users, by the team, we were able to answer these questions. For example, the donor's delay in the signature of this contract was something we knew that is a reason, a factor to be late and to not go for the financial execution in a proper way. So we were able to identify by this factor what are the main donors creating this delay, and we proved this way, not only in the minds of the team, but in a way that is represented and explored in the graph. So we had some other conclusions that were not, we had the hypothesis that the partnership was going to be another factor that can explain this financial execution, but we got that it's not a reason for this problem for us. So not always you can prove what the team know, but you can always, you can cancel some hypotheses that they made beforehand. Okay? And we finally solved the financial execution, and this is a production product the end users have available, and they explore all this data thanks to the project. So what are the next steps in terms of how you continue with this project? So of course, automatization of these ETLs, this transformation of data, was really interesting for us weighting the relationships, because not all of them are so important for the team. So then we can have some optimization algorithms that you can maximize or minimize the impact. Of course, some alert systems, like for this contrast we saw before. So something is going wrong, so get an email about it. This is something easy, thanks to a lot of visualization systems. We got a team really collaborating on this tool and getting insights about it, which was my main objective, but it of course comes with a lot of training, with a lot of time, spending time with them, because they don't have the technical knowledge. We would like to get some predictions. We are not at that point. We are already improving data quality thanks to go for graph technology. And well, we'll go to some other problems that are not the financial execution. Okay, the conclusion. Yeah? Okay. Some conclusions, we went only for the result focused. We went to go to answer some questions, that's it. Of course, we improved decision making, and for me, the democratization of data was the most important point. But of course, you have this funding and time and lack of vision in long term from the is super typical in the NGOs, also in the private sector, but especially with us in our sector. So these are the two main problems you can find when you go for these kind of projects. So thank you. I don't know if we have time for questions. Yeah? Okay, perfect.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, question.
Okay, first.
So thank you so much, Mario. I had a question. So a lot of the analysis that is happening around the financial execution, is there a conversation within the team also to look at how to use the data on spending to essentially define the evolution of some key vulnerabilities and parameterize for that? Meaning, because those are very volatile environments and consumption patterns also are function of different parameters within a household, is there a way to intersect result data in terms of what is the impact of the cash transaction instead of just the quality of the program delivery side, so that we can infer essentially better targeting models and potentially also the amount of cash depending on the evolution of vulnerabilities based on the end user consumption or spending patterns. First question. Second question is, how do we decentralize the model? Is there a way that we can actually bring this type of sort of relational understanding of data closer to the mission, closer to the operational side, where actually decisions on a daily basis are taken and are critical and necessary, and there might be a lag between our capacity to analyze in HQ, make sense of that data, while some of the emergency settings do require prompt decision making that needs to be quicker. So those are the two kind of broader questions.
Yeah, okay, for the first one, there are different things over there, like data quality is the first. We cannot rely on the information systems we have, like, and it also happens in all the organizations, like you have no data, or you have data that cannot prove anything. So this is the first one. The second one is the record of all this data. So if we cannot go for predictions if we don't have data from a few years before. So that's the second thing. Also related with the second question, like this lack of vision at the long term. So this is it's impossible to have a team of 2 people doing that, one technical and one with activity approach, to be developing this kind of projects without the support from the direction, without funding, without all this stuff. And the second question was? Yeah, okay. So for that was really struggling to train this team that was working with this application, and you will find you will face this kind of problem in the country offices, but it's something that could be done. And first you need training. You need, of course, this second factor I said, like the long-term vision. So they don't have time. So if nobody pushes them to get this, they will not care about it, because they have enough problems, enough work, and that's also, as you know, a very difficult question in an NGO sector. Yeah, did I answer?
My question is a bit more on the technical side. I saw that you showed a diagram, probably tells that your database is Neo4j. Mm-hmm. But also you also showed all the diagrams that resembles like some relational database. Yeah. So I would like to ask you, like, where is your source of truth in this system? So if you have like one, is the graph the source of truth? Or if you have multiple database, how do you synchronize that? Because I also think that, yeah, you could use the graph database to do the graph processing, that's what's relevant, and store the data that you need for other purposes in a database, maybe that's faster to access that have a research. So,
yeah.
I'd like to know about that.
Yeah, so we only used one graph database, and then we use, because they have like, I use for that some diagrams, open source tools, also graph databases and visualization systems. So this is why they have different design. But no, we only had one graph database that was in the top of a SQL system, databases, normal relational ones, and yeah, that was it. But we don't have different graphs, and we actually have this KACHE project graph in one place, and then the financial execution in another. Okay, so the next steps are how to mix them. And for example, understanding not only because of the donor's delay or some other reasons, but if a security incident happens in Lebanon, in the place where the KACHE projects are running, how to connect this with the financial execution and understanding why this contract is delayed, for example, okay? Or why we don't get to the financial execution for that concrete contract. Yeah?
I have a question about the users. What does a typical user look like, and how do they find it?
Well, yeah, good question. So this is something that always you tell to your team, to your organization, they really love it. Like, I want to do this thing, I want to do another, but it's really difficult to reach somebody that is totally able to do that in terms of time and availability. So they are not techie at all. They know nothing about technology. You have to go with them step by step and really slow. Also because everyone, I mean, everyone, you and me, were used to relational databases. We are used to have tables, and that's it. So when you come to this, you don't understand what is a graph. But then when they start and they get used to that, it's easier for them because it's a more graphic way to do and to see the things. Okay? So they are mainly working, they have a lot of field experience, so that's why it was really like fun seeing them exploring the graph, because they know what is next. So they already have this knowledge in their minds, and this is a tool only to show them the result of that and to prove in a descriptive way that all they were thinking about is true. Okay. Did I answer? No.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So your product, is that does it have kind of application wrapper around it, or is it basically a database? How do they interact with it?
Yeah. Okay. So we have the graph database, but for that you need a lot of coding knowledge. So we started to do these questions with this code, but then we send it to a visualization system that is more like you can make some queries without knowing any code. Okay.
And you just show them how to do that.
Yeah, exactly. You show them how to get the first question, the global one, that you get 1 or 2 nodes, and then they go to explore the different reasons. Because this donors delay, this partnership reason to be late in execution were different nodes. Okay, so they were nodes connected to the contracts and to the places. So if you go straight to that node and expand it, you already know what is the problem. Okay. Yeah.
I was curious about you mentioned the learning process. Basically, or let's say the process of getting into the graph world was quite painful. And I was kind of curious if you could elaborate on that, because I think it's very relatable, especially if there's this sort of group of, let's say, software developers that are rather coming from web-based web development, right, and then coming to the graph world. Some of the things aren't really that clear today. That you have multiple graph DB database engines and all competing and saying at the best, and basically sometimes the clarity isn't that great. And I was just curious, what's your company experience on that journey?
Okay, so I knew this question was going to pop up, so I'm gonna say the stack. Like we use SQL. Then for the transformation, this ETL was Pentaho. This transformation tool. All of them are open source. I mean, not SQL, but then we use Neo4j and Linkurious. Okay, so this process, I already did this process before in another organization, this human rights organization I told you. So it was not so difficult, but in this case we had a lot of data. And we are not talking about big data, to be honest, but it really takes a lot of time, and we spent a lot of time in coding in Pentaho how to get this fast, because we needed to have it like in a everyday basis or something like that. So it was hard because we had to learn how to use Pentaho in that case. I didn't have experience on that. And but well, once you get used and the code is clear, it was like 2 years ago. So at that point, there was not a lot of documentation about how to do this integration, this transformation of data. Nowadays, there are a lot of tools to do that. Some tools open source that you take your data model in a relational database and it transforms automatically. So in that case, we really needed to see where we put the properties, where we put the labels, and it was like more handmade work. But is that enough?
Yeah.
You get it?
As far as you want to go to.
Yeah. But it was easier, like there was some tool to transform this data, and once in the graph, this visualization tool is automatically, like it embeds everything, and you have it in two places at the same time very quickly. Okay.
Any others? All right, I think we'll wrap it up. Thank you so much, Mario, for your
Thanks.
presentation, and thanks for staying till the very end, and for joining us. I'll just give you a round of
Thanks to
applause.
you as well.